Hello everyone, and welcome to this session on civil procedure and civil trials. A court's decree is a powerful thing, but without execution, it's effectively meaningless. Execution proceedings are what transform a legal pronouncement into a tangible outcome, truly ensuring that justice is served. Execution of a decree is a crucial process in civil law, making sure that judgments passed by civil courts are actually enforced and implemented. Without this step, a court's decree would have no real meaning. The rules for execution are primarily found in the Code of Civil Procedure, 1908, with substantive parts in sections 36 to 74 and procedural details in Order 21. Its purpose is simply to enforce a court's order. For instance, if a court orders B to pay A 20,000 rupees and B refuses, A needs to apply for execution to get the court to enforce that payment. The main parties involved are the decree holder, who is the winner of the decree, and the judgment debtor, against whom the decree is passed. The process begins when the decree holder files an application for execution with the court. The application for execution is a formal step requiring specific details and adhering to certain timelines. So, who can actually file this application? Primarily, it's the decree holder, but also their legal representative if they passed away, anyone claiming under the decree holder, a transferee if the decree has been transferred, or even any joint decree holder. And against whom can the decree be executed? Typically, the judgment debtor. However, it can also be executed against their legal representative, limited to property received from the judgment debtor, anyone claiming through them, their surety, or a person holding their power of attorney. What needs to be in the application? It requires a certified copy of the decree, details like the suit number, names of parties, decree date, amount, and any adjustments made. You also need to indicate if an appeal was preferred, specify the desired mode of execution, like attachment or arrest, and provide details of the judgment debtor. As for timelines, generally, an application must be filed within 12 years from the decree date, but for cases involving mandatory injunctions, the limitation period is 3 years. The Code of Civil Procedure also specifies which courts have the authority to execute a decree and when a decree can be transferred for execution. A decree can be executed by the court that originally passed it, or by another court to which the decree has been sent for execution. The court which has passed the decree is typically the court of first instance, where the case was originally filed and decided. Even if an appeal occurred, that original court generally remains competent for execution. If the original court no longer exists or loses jurisdiction, then the court that would have had jurisdiction at the time of execution can step in. A decree can be transferred to another court for execution for several reasons: if the judgment debtor resides or has property within that court's jurisdiction, or if the decree directs the sale or delivery of immovable property within that jurisdiction. This transfer can happen on the court's own motion or upon application by a party, but it's important to note that it's not an inherent right of the party to demand such a transfer. The CPC outlines various methods, or modes, by which a court can enforce its decrees. These are specified in Section 51 of the CPC. One common mode is the delivery of property, applicable when the decree is for possession of specific movable or immovable property. The court ensures the physical handover of the property. Another widely used method is attachment and sale of property. Here, the court can attach the judgment debtor's property to prevent them from transferring it, and then sell it through a public auction to recover the decreed amount. In certain cases, primarily money decrees, there's also the option of arrest and detention, where the judgment debtor can be detained in a civil prison to compel compliance. The court can also appoint a receiver to manage or sell the judgment debtor's property and distribute the proceeds. Finally, the court has the discretion to order execution in any other manner it deems fit and necessary to enforce the decree. Let's delve a bit deeper into arrest and detention as a mode of execution. It's primarily used for money decrees, but can also apply to specific performance of a contract or injunctions. The court has the discretion to issue a show cause notice before arrest, and a warrant might be issued if the judgment debtor is likely to abscond. Once arrested, the judgment debtor must be brought before the court promptly. It's important to know that payment of the decreed amount at any point prevents or terminates arrest and detention. During the inquiry, the judgment debtor may be held in custody or released on security. If the amount isn't paid, the court may order detention. A period of up to 15 days may be given to satisfy the decree, with re-arrest possible if they fail. However, certain individuals are exempt from arrest and detention. This includes women, for money decrees, judicial officers while on duty, members of legislative bodies, and if the decretal amount does not exceed 2,000 rupees. State governments can also specify other exemptions. As for detention periods, if the amount exceeds 5,000 rupees, it can be up to 3 months. If it's between 2,000 rupees and 5,000 rupees, it's up to 6 weeks. Another key mode is the attachment of property, which allows seizing and potentially selling a judgment debtor's property to satisfy a decree. So, what can be attached? This includes houses, lands, bonds, shares, money, and goods. But what cannot be attached? Certain items are protected, such as salaries, women's personal ornaments, life insurance policies, and essential articles needed for living. For movable property, it's typically seized and placed in custody, though perishable property might be sold immediately. If it's inconvenient to remove, it might be left in place with a surety bond. Immovable property is attached with a proclamation of sale. There are also Garnishee proceedings, which allow the attachment of money or property held by a third party, known as the Garnishee, who owes the judgment debtor. The Garnishee is then ordered to pay the court if their liability is admitted. Special rules apply to the attachment of agricultural produce due to its unique nature, as it can be growing, cut, perishable, or seasonal. If it's a growing crop, the attachment warrant is affixed directly on the land where the crop is growing. For cut or gathered produce, the warrant is affixed on the threshing floor or deposit place and at the judgment debtor's residence. Once attached, the produce is considered to be in the possession of the court. After attachment, the court arranges for its custody to prevent decay or loss. Applications for growing crops must specify the harvest time, and custody charges need to be paid. The court may initially order the debtor to manage the produce, but if they fail, the decree holder can step in, with costs added to the decree. Attachment continues even after harvest, and execution may be suspended for growing crops before harvest, prohibiting their removal. Perishable growing crops should ideally not be attached more than 20 days before harvest. Now, let's look at the powers of the executing court. The general rule here is that the executing court cannot go behind the decree. This means it cannot question the legality or correctness of the decree it's executing. Its primary duty is simply to execute the decree, as it is, without delving into how it was passed or the evidence considered. This principle was affirmed in cases like Tapan Lal Chahotelo versus Kundan Kuntmalangaram. However, the executing court can decide questions relating to the execution, discharge, or satisfaction of the decree. This includes determining if the decree is executable, identifying the property, or figuring out the amount due. It can also investigate claims and objections and allow part satisfaction of the decree. There are very specific exceptions where the executing court can go behind the decree. If the terms of the decree are vague or ambiguous, the court can interpret it to understand the actual order. If the court that passed the original decree inherently lacked jurisdiction, the executing court can refuse to execute it. This is a fundamental flaw and can be raised at any stage. Lastly, if the executing court discovers that the decree was obtained through fraud or collusion, it can also refuse to execute it. Even after a decree is passed, there are provisions for challenging or temporarily halting its execution, as well as for setting aside property sales. First, regarding a stay of execution, an appeal does not automatically stop execution. A specific order from the appellate court is required. A judgment debtor can also raise objections, for example, if the decree is satisfied, premature, void, or if the property is exempt from attachment. Execution only proceeds if the decree is enforceable. Secondly, a sale conducted during execution can be set aside. This can happen due to material irregularity, like improper notice, or if there was fraud. The application to set aside a sale must be filed within 30 days of the sale confirmation. Finally, regarding confirmation and distribution, if no valid objection is received, the court confirms the sale and issues a certificate of sale to the purchaser. If there are multiple decree holders, the sale proceeds are divided proportionally among them, a process known as rateable distribution. In conclusion, execution proceedings are truly the culmination of the civil justice process, ensuring that court decisions are not just pronouncements but are effectively realized. In summary, execution is the process of enforcing a civil court's judgment or order. It begins with an application by the decree holder and can be carried out by either the original court or a transferee court. The various modes include delivery of property, attachment and sale, arrest and detention, and the appointment of a receiver. While the executing court generally cannot question the decree's validity, it can decide matters related to its execution or interpretation. Furthermore, Execution can be stayed through appeal or objections, and sales can be set aside on specific grounds. Ultimately, without execution, a decree is effectively meaningless. It transforms a legal pronouncement into a tangible outcome, ensuring justice is served. Through this unit, you've gained practical skills such as the ability to draft and file execution petitions, understand attachment and sale procedures, respond to Garnishee orders and objections, and file applications to set aside irregular or fraudulent sales. Thank you for your attention.